One introduction Rosep view the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosep view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHYAD December 6, 2025 The sheer amount of evidence can make chatbots persuasive. In Webisode 57DHYAD, 1 Internet, 2 Medicine and Science, 3 New Jersey, 4 Sweden, 5 United Kingdom, 6 Ukraine, 7, and 8 headlines main content. 1 Internet Politics Democrats. Chatbots can help you plan a vacation, they can check facts and offer advice. Can they also sway your politics? A pair of studies published on Thursday in the journals Nature and Science found that a short interaction with a chatbot powered by artificial intelligence could meaningfully shift some opinions about a political candidate or issue. Having a brief conversation with a trained chatbot proved roughly 4 times as persuasive as television ads from recent American presidential elections. One of the studies found excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood. Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, December 6, 2025. The findings suggest that AI could play an increasing role in political campaigns, including in the 2026 pivotal midterm elections in the United States, giving candidates and others tools to sway even those who say they have already made up their minds. This is where there is going to be the frontier of innovation for political campaigning, said David G. Rand, a professor of information science and marketing at Cornell University, who worked on both studies. During the experiments, researchers used versions of commercially available chatbots like the ChatGPT of OpenAI and the Llama of Meta and the Gemini of Google. Then they instructed the chatbots to lead participants through conversations intended to persuade them to support a given candidate or political issue. While the most popular ones have sought to project political neutrality, others have explicitly sought to reflect the views of their owners, including Grok, the bot embedded in X, which is owned by Elon Musk. The chatbots in the study, which have undocumented eagerness to please, did not always tell the truth, and sometimes cited unsubstantiated evidence as the conversations went on. The ones prompted to argue for right-leaning politicians made more inaccurate claims than those in support of left-leaning politicians, which the researchers determined by vetting the arguments of chatbots. With professional human fact-checkers in Canada and Poland, roughly 1 in 10 voters told the researchers that the conversations persuaded them to shift from not supporting the AI-backed candidate to supporting them. The figure was 1 in 25 in the United States, where President Trump narrowly defeated Kamala Harris in a divisive race. In one conversation with a Trump supporter about trust in the candidates, the chatbot of the researchers brought up the Kamala Harris track record in California, including creating the Bureau of Justice for Children in California and championing the Consumer Privacy Act. It also pointed to the fact that the Trump organization was fined $1.6 million for tax fraud. By the end of the chat, the Trump supporter appeared to waver. "I guess if I had my doubt about Harris being trustworthy, she is starting to look really trustworthy," the supporter wrote in response, "and I might just vote her instead." The chatbot prompted to support Trump also proved persuasive. The Trump commitment to his campaign promises, such as tax cuts and deregulation, has been clear. It explained to a voter who leaned toward Ms. Harris, "These actions, regardless of their impact, demonstrate a certain level of reliability. I should have been more open-minded about Trump." The voter conceded. What made the chatbots so persuasive, the researchers theorized, was the sheer amount of evidence they cited to support their position, even if it was not always accurate. In the experiments, they put this theory to the test by instructing the chatbots not to use facts and evidence when making the argument. In one trial, persuasiveness dropped by about half. The findings challenged a common perception that the political positions of many Americans were unmoved by new information. 2 Medicine and Science. He had the worst bloody nose of his life. That was just the beginning. The unchecked bleeding of one man was a mystery for years before a scan revealed the cause. ROSEP, spoiler, laparoscopic removal of a tumor in the thymus gland, cured it. Edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood. Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, December 5, 2025. The first thing the 59-year-old man saw when he opened his eyes was the blood. Normally, we have over 150,000 platelets per microliter of blood. He had a scant 3,000 without platelets. Any injury can cause bleeding that is hard to stop. The tiny red dots, known as petechiae, are leaks from capillaries. Injured by minor trauma or just the increased venous pressure of walking. The man considered himself healthy, or did until he caught COVID 3 months earlier. It was not a bad case, but it lingered long enough for him to develop a sinus infection, which required antibiotics. He saw his doctor the next month for an annual exam. Routine blood work showed then that his platelets were low at 51,000. A repeated test was even lower, so she sent him to the ER and referred him to a hematologist, Lawrence CYDRYN. When the man saw the blood specialist the following week, a recent test showed a normal platelet count. His exam was unremarkable. CYDRYN had some theories about his transient thrombocytopenia, the medical term for a drop in platelets. COVID can rarely cause an autoimmune disorder known as immune thrombocytopenia, or IDP, in which the white cells of the body mistakenly hunt and destroy platelets. Another possibility, the antibiotic he had been treated with, Levaquin, can infrequently cause low platelets, but when CYDRYN rechecked his blood that day, his platelet count was not normal. He now had too many, 890,000, more than twice the upper limit of normal. CYDRYN wondered if this were a robust rebound from his transient low, and was reassured when the numbers were coming down a few days later. But then he had the worst nosebleed of his life and ended up in the ER. Cyclical ordeal in the hospital. Doctors assumed the patient was having a recurrence of his IDP, and he was treated with steroids and intravenous immune globulins, IVIG, a treatment made from thousands of antibodies from a donor. With the steroids, this would temporarily quell the improper attacks of an immune system gone a little wild. Almost immediately, the platelet count of the patient began to rise. He was discharged on a tapering dose of steroids. A month later, the rash and bloody nose returned. He called the CYDRYN office and was told to go to the ER again. His platelet count was low again. He was given steroids and IVIG, and his platelets began to rise. At the next check, his platelets had again shot well past normal. CYDRYN now suggested a new diagnosis. This was not IDP. It was an even rarer disorder called cyclic thrombocytopenia. Medicine knows little about cyclic thrombocytopenia beyond what is clear in the name. Patients have repeated episodes of platelets falling and rising. There have been fewer than 100 cases reported over time. The man recognized a pattern. His platelets would drop over the course of 2 weeks, stay low for a week, and then shoot up for the next 2 weeks. When they were low, the man would find himself covered with bruises and the petechial rash. Sometimes he would get strange welts in his mouth. Once his urine was red with blood, the whole cycle usually lasted 37 days. He joked sometimes that he had a monthly period. CYTRYN contacted experts around the country. He tried treatments to suppress the immune system of a patient and others to promote platelet production. One drug caused liver inflammation, another was hard on his kidneys. None changed the 37-day cycle. The patient shaped his life around his disease. When his platelets were at their lowest, he would stay home often in bed. It was not that he felt so awful, but he wanted to make sure he did not do anything to cause bleeding. He was especially worried about his head. He knew that hemorrhage inside the skull could be devastating. He had test after test. 2 bone marrow biopsies were unrevealing. Imaging of his brain, his abdomen, and his pelvis showed no abnormality that could be linked to his platelets. Blood tests were likewise uninformative. A couple of years into this odyssey, he found a new primary care, Dr. Edward S. Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg focused on medical issues beyond his fluctuating platelet count. Most concerning was that his cholesterol was high, and he had other risk factors for coronary artery disease. He was male, he was over 60, he had high blood pressure. Heart disease is still the #1 killer of men in this country. Goldberg reminded the patient he proposed starting a statin to lower his cholesterol. The patient was hesitant. His father had taken one and hated it. Another possibility was to get a CT angiogram of his chest to see how much plaque had formed in and around the blood vessels of his heart. If he had clean coronaries, they could give diet and exercise more of a chance, if not the statin. It was barely an hour after the scan when Goldberg called him. His coronaries were fine, but there was a large mass in his chest. It was nearly the size of a deck of cards, and it looked as if it were growing from his thymus gland. The thymus is an essential component of the immune system. It trains one population of white blood cells to distinguish invaders from normal tissue. It is most active in childhood. By middle age, the gland has stopped working and has turned to fat. Goldberg recommended he see a surgeon to remove the mass, which was probably cancer. Several scans later, an oncologic surgeon at Memorial Sloan Kettering assured the patient that the cancer had not spread and that removal of the tumor would probably be the end of the matter. The man asked if the surgery might also fix his platelets. The surgeon did not know. He had never seen a case like this. There have been a handful of documented cases of immune thrombocytopenias linked to thymic tumors known as thymomas. In some, treating the tumor stopped the thrombocytopenia. Regardless, the tumor would have to come out. The surgeon and patient plotted the best time to schedule the surgery when his platelets were neither too high nor too low. The operation was scheduled for early last August. The tumor was large, right at the limit to allow a minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery. He would try for that, the surgeon told him, but if it did not work, they would have to cut his sternum open. Waking after the surgery, the man looked at his chest. It was shaved, and a dark magic marker line traced the middle of his sternum, but there were no sutures, just 3 small incisions over his rib cage. As September approached, the patient waited anxiously to see if his platelets would plunge. On schedule, he brought a packed bag to the lab for his next round of blood work in case he had to check into the hospital again. But this time his platelets were normal. Employees at the lab cheered when they delivered the news in October. Then November, there were some ups and downs, though not as dramatic as before the surgery. His doctors remain on alert, but from the point of view of the man, his health is moving in the right direction. He is optimistic that his ordeal is finally over. 3 New Jersey U.S. Senator and Democrat Cory Booker giving money directly to children is an idea the right and left could love. The Michael and Susan Dell $6.25 billion donation to child savings accounts fits a trend, giving with no strings attached. In some ways, it is a bipartisan philosophy. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times. December 6, 2025. In 2018, Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, introduced a bill that would create something called a baby bond for every child born in the United States. It was an ambitious idea to use federal money to help individual children build a nest egg, a type of wealth out of reach for many. It never got out of committee. If we are giving wealthy people huge pathways for tax avoidance, he added, we should be trying to do things to encourage philanthropy. I think you can go so far as to say baby bonds in its current iteration and form might not have occurred without the generous contributions of the Ford Foundation, said Derek Hamilton, a professor at the New School for Social Research whose work with William Darity Jr., an economist at Duke University and Howard University, helped lead to the baby bonds concept. Dr. Darity said the idea to provide children with some kind of publicly financed trust account first arose in 2009 and 2010, a period marked by the fallout of the financial crisis and the Great Recession. We focused on newborns because no one could blame them for the wealth position of their families, Dr. Darity said in an email on Monday, the day before the announcement by the Dells. Cruz and Booker sent a letter to the chief executives of 1,000 large companies asking them to contribute to the new accounts. Dr. Hamilton, who preferred to see a federally funded program, said Trump accounts as constituted would not close the wealth gap between rich and poor and could even make it worse. But he has hoped that some future more left-leaning Congress will take the structure that has been created and improve on it. Trump, who controls the Republican Party, has now endorsed the idea, Booker said. So if the next president comes along and says, I want to deal with the friction issues and I want to expand the seed money, or what have you, it is not even going to be debatable anymore. 4 Sweden Russian threat. Swedish Navy encountering Russian submarines almost weekly and more could be on the way. Moscow continuously reinforcing its presence in the region, says Swedish Chief of Operations Captain Marko Petkovic. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, December 6, 2025. The Swedish Navy encounters Russian submarines in the Baltic Sea on an almost weekly basis, its Chief of Operations has said, and is preparing for a further increase in the event of ceasefire or armistice in the Ukraine war. Captain Marko Petkovic said Moscow was continuously reinforcing its presence presence in the region and sightings of its vessels were a regular part of life for the Swedish Navy, it's very common, he said, adding that the number of sightings had increased in recent years. Baltic Sea region is facing an increasing range of threats, including suspected hybrid attacks from drones, alleged sabotage of underwater infrastructure, and a steady flow of aging oil tankers in the form of shadow fleet ships carrying crude oil from Russia. Last month, the British Defense Secretary said that a Russian spy ship had entered British waters and shown lasers at military pilots, warning that the UK faced a new era of threat from hostile countries. Sweden recently hosted a major NATO exercise against submarines called Playbook Merlin 25, featuring 9 countries, including Sweden, Germany, France, and the US, in which hundreds of personnel practiced their submarine hunting skills in the unique conditions of the Baltic to prepare for possible underwater attack. The hilly underwater landscape of the Baltic near Sweden makes it difficult to detect submarines because they can hide. Petkovic said Russia was increasing its capabilities and was producing 1 Kilo class submarine a year in St. Petersburg in the Kaliningrad enclave position between Poland and Lithuania. Once a ceasefire or armistice is eventually in place in Ukraine, you can only assess, and we do assess, that Russia will reinforce its capabilities in this region, said Petkovic. He said the Russia shadow fleet of civilian flagged oil tankers was also a concern and did not rule out the potential for such ships to be used to launch drones. Underwater infrastructure was especially vulnerable in the Baltics. He said this was especially the case for Sweden, Norway, Finland, Estonia, and Lithuania, he said, which were fully dependent on the sea lines for communication for our sustainment of our societies. However, he believes that increased NATO vigilance is having an impact. He said that since Operation Baltic Sentry was established in January, we have not seen any cable incidents in this region at all. He added, first of all, it shows that the alliance works cohesion. The Baltic Sentry has proven that point. Regardless of whether any of the incidents have been state-sponsored or if it has been bad seamanship or anything in between, it has raised awareness amongst the merchant fleet that they should be a bit more cautious when traveling our regional waters. 5. United Kingdom affordability, the only idea around. Will Labour return to a customs union with the EU? The desperate search for economic growth is pushing the party to confront the issue that dare not speak its name. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against would smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, December 6, 2025. For much of the last week, the Keir Starmer government has been suggesting that a closer relationship with Europe will be a more prominent part of his agenda in the future, but it was a little noted personnel change that might prove the most telling shift. Nick Thomas Simons, the minister in charge of EU negotiations, was promoted to full cabinet rank. The Welshman, a close ally of Starmer, will be an advocate of a closer relationship with the EU when ministers meet, but a source close to the Prime Minister said he is not going to bang the cabinet table and say it is customs union or bust if that happens. It has to come from Keir himself. For now, Starmer seems determined to stick to his red lines, telling the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey at PMQs on Wednesday that he remained committed to the fundamental architecture of the Brexit deal. Downing Street sources acknowledged that Starmer is pursuing an iterative process with the EU and that at the next annual reset summit expected in the spring, there will be fresh issues on the table. They admit this could include trade-offs and that the Prime Minister would be much more frank about the damage Brexit had caused the economy, but emphasized that any proposals would stop short of the customs union. The government would have to give up its independent trade policy and therefore abandon recently negotiated trade deals with the US and India. The UK would no longer have the power to set its own tariffs, as they would go back to being decided by the EU. Others observe that the politics of the EU has hardened towards the UK, demonstrated by the length of time taken to agree their existing negotiating mandate. One senior aide noted the turbulent domestic politics of France and Germany, suggesting they could be a bloc. But while any moves to go back into a customs union this side of the election look remote, those close to the negotiations are clear where it goes next. The reality is this: for this parliament, we are where we are. One said. As for the next one, that is what this debate is really about. 6. Ukraine radiation threat combined with Russian threat. Cornell nuclear reactor. Russian drone damage in February 2025 and degrading of protective shield placed in 1986 with 30-year lifespan. 30 years from 1986 meant lifespan of temporary protective shell until 2016. Rescuers work on the new safe confinement covering the remains of the destroyed reactor at the Cornell nuclear power plant site. In February, rescuers work on the new safe confinement covering the remains of the destroyed reactor at the Cornell nuclear power plant site. In February, Ukraine bombed Cornell shelter, no longer blocks radiation, and needs major repair. IA drone attack that Ukraine blamed on Russia. Blue hole and painstakingly erected €1.5 billion shield meant to allow for final cleanup of 1986 meltdown site. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against would smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, December 6, 2025. The protective shield over the Cornell disaster nuclear reactor in Ukraine, which was hit by a drone in February, can no longer perform its main function of blocking radiation. The International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) has announced in February a drone strike blew a hole in the new safe confinement, which was painstakingly built at a cost of €1.5 billion, $1.75 billion next to the destroyed reactor, and then hauled into place on tracks with the work completed in 2019 by a Europe-led initiative. The IAEA said an inspection last week of the steel confinement structure found the drone impact had degraded the structure. The 1986 Cornell explosion, which happened when Ukraine was under the rule of Moscow as part of the Soviet Union, sent radiation across Europe in the scramble to contain the meltdown. The Soviets built over the reactor a concrete sarcophagus with only a 30-year lifespan. The new confinement was built to contain radiation during the decades-long final removal of the sarcophagus, ruined reactor building underneath it, and the melted-down nuclear fuel itself. Graphic of Cornell new safe confinement explainer. The IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said an inspection mission confirmed that the protective structure had lost its primary safety functions, including the confinement capability, but also found that there was no permanent damage to its load-bearing structures or monitoring systems. Grossi said some repairs have been carried out, but comprehensive restoration remains essential to prevent further degradation and ensure long-term nuclear safety. Photo of people inspecting the damage to the radiation containment shield of Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear plant site in Ukraine in February 2025. The UN reported on February 14, 2025, that Ukrainian authorities said a drone with a high explosive warhead struck the plant, caused a fire, and damaged the protective cladding around the reactor. Ukrainian authorities said the drone was Russian. Moscow denied it had attacked the plant. Radiation levels remained normal and stable, and there was no reports of radiation leaks. The UN said in February Russia occupied the plant and the surrounding area for more than a month in the first weeks of its February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, as its forces initially tried to advance on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv. The IEA had conducted the inspection at the same time as a country-wide survey of damage to electricity substations from the war between Ukraine and Russia. 7 headlines. The New York Times, December 6, 2025. Business drugs. Ex-DEA agent charged with agreeing to launder millions for cartel. The New York Times, China National Security Office in Hong Kong summons foreign journalists. The New York Times, film deal. Angst turns to anger in Hollywood as Netflix hooks Warner Brothers. The New York Times, film deal. Opinion: if Netflix eats Warner Brothers, it will be the end of Hollywood. The New York Times, film deal. What to know about the Netflix $83 billion deal for Warner Brothers Discovery. The New York Times, Internet Democrats chatbots can meaningfully shift political opinion. Studies find. The New York Times, Italy, nature stampeding turtles might have made fossil tracks in Italian cliffs. The New York Times, Japan, China is mad at Japan and pop stars are paying for it. The New York Times, Louisiana, New Orleans, the mayor-elect of New Orleans is already awash and challenges. The New York Times, New Jersey, U.S. Senator Cory Booker idea Trump accounts baby bonds giving directly to kids is an idea right and left could love. The New York Times, New York City, arson during an attack on a human. Man accused of setting subway rider on fire is charged with arson. The New York Times, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of medicine and science. He had the worst bloody nose of his life. That was just the beginning. The New York Times, Saudi Arabia will sell you alcohol now if you are rich enough. The New York Times, Trump actions. Opinion: what is going on with Trump? The New York Times, Trump actions. The Trump security strategy focuses on profit, not spreading democracy. The New York Times, Trump, January 6, 2021. Allies as Bongino celebrates arrest in pipe bomb case. Others on the right remain skeptical. The New York Times, Trump lack of affordability. Have the Trump tariffs gone as high as they can go? Business hope. So the New York Times, Trump lowering Obamacare subsidies. Fallout poll suggests voters may blame Republicans more if Affordable Care Act subsidies go away. The New York Times, Trump lowering Obamacare subsidies. Fallout running out of time. Republicans in Congress still lack a health plan. The New York Times, Trump, Republicans opinion. Republicans are quietly pushing back against Trump. The New York Times, Trump unchallenged by Supreme Court. Opinion: the Supreme Court is failing at its most important job. The New York Times, Trump unchallenged by Supreme Court. The Supreme Court once wary of partisan gerrymandering goes all in. The New York Times, Ukraine battlefield picture worsening for Ukraine as Trump pushes peace plan. The New York Times, Utah, Trump, the endgame post Trump, what happens to his war chest? Utah offers one clue. The New York Times, Venezuela, Trump wants Maduro to go. Here is who could replace him in Venezuela. The New York Times, 8 headlines. The Guardian, December 6, 2025. Business: new U.S. seed ban risks driving cannabis genetics. Underground growers warn cannabis. The Guardian, film deal. This merger must be blocked. Netflix Warner Brothers deal faces fierce backlash. Warner Brothers, The Guardian, film deal. The end of big screen cinema. What Netflix hopes to achieve by buying Warner Brothers movies. The Guardian, film deal. Warner Brothers disaster. Netflix inks deal for troubled Hollywood giant media. The Guardian, Louisiana jailbreak after U.S. prisoners chip away weak concrete wall. U.S. prisons. The Guardian, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of medicine and science. Experts fear for U.S. childhood vaccine schedule after hepatitis B guideline change. U.S. healthcare. The Guardian, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of medicine and science. Women: the truth about the gender care gap. Are men really more likely to abandon their ill-wise relationships? The Guardian, Sweden, Ukraine, Swedish Navy encountering Russian submarines almost weekly and more could be on the way. Sweden, The Guardian, Trump Hegseth, fallout pressure grows on reckless Hegseth as twin scandals engulf Pentagon chief Pete Hegseth. The Guardian, Ukraine bombed Cornell shelter no longer blocks radiation and needs major repair. IAEA, Ukraine. The Guardian, Ukraine, Russia launches attacks across Ukraine as Miami peace talks continue. Ukraine, The Guardian, United Kingdom affordability, the only idea around. Will Labour return to a customs union with the EU? Brexit, The Guardian, United Kingdom, Manchester Green Party. Zach Polanski, I'm going to confess I have not finished the climate book by Greta Thunberg. Life and Style. The Guardian.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Schoen Lucht, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7. Natural Resources Defense Council, nicknamed NRDC. 8. Prakaunia Narzexwisistik Istit, which means Workshop for All Beings in Polish. 9. Rachel Carson Council. 10 Solutions for Our Climate, nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
1 Introduction Rosette View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosette View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.